Welcome, everyone, to episode 166 of the ARC Junkies Podcast, and thank you for downloading. I just got back from Des Moines, Iowa, and it was my first time out in the Midwest. It was actually a pretty cool experience. You all may remember episode 157 when I talked to Christina Mahler about her nonprofit organization that she was trying to set up called Crew Collaborative. Well, it's now official. She's asked me to be on her board of directors, and I accepted the position. So that's why I went out to Iowa. We actually had our first board of directors meeting, and it took place out in Des Moines, Iowa. So what exactly is Crew? It is a collaborative effort to get more people into the skilled trades. So as everybody I'm sure knows right now, there is a huge shortage of young men and women getting into the skilled trades, and Crew is trying to fix that. In essence, the system is broken. For too long, our generation and the current generation have been told to be successful, you got to go to college, you got to get a degree, and it's not true. You can make a great living becoming a skilled tradesperson. And right now, Crew is a group of 20 people from various skilled trades, including the mining sector, excavating, hardscaping, concrete, asphalt, welding, you name it. You know, like everybody in the trades. These people are all super passionate about what they do and willing to share their experiences and try to get more people into the skilled trades. They're very active, all of these people that are passionate about what they do. They love what they do. And like myself, they can see the writing on the wall, and it doesn't look good for our respective industries. We have to do more to show people that skilled trades can be a plan A when you're getting out of high school or when you're transitioning from the military. And I know countless of people that have bachelor's degrees in business or accounting or humanities or whatever, and they couldn't find a job when they graduated, and now they're working in some dead-end job, making minimum wage, carrying around $60,000 in student debt, and the debt follows you until you die, or you pay it off in full, one of the two. It's one of the few debts that you really can't escape. You can't file for bankruptcy or default on it, though the government will garnish your wages if you took out student loans, so there's a better way. If you want to go to college, you know that that's what you want to do, and, you get into a career field that has openings, by all means, have at it, but college isn't for everybody. And for the people that, they ran into that situation, they took out all the loans, they were told to go to college. What if they had been told that there's another way, that you don't have to go to college? Like there's another option. You can actually go to a trade school or an apprenticeship program, and at a fraction of the cost, or in sometimes, some cases, free admission, you can actually learn a skilled trade in about a fraction of the time that you would pursuing an AS or a BS degree. And once you get done with that, here's the kicker: there's a job waiting for you with a competitive salary and a career path. So, that's kind of what we're doing with Crew. And we're going to be doing classroom talks, meet and greets, events, and providing all kinds of resources to help out individuals who will get into this, or, to promote skilled trades. And, if you are interested in it, you can go to crewcollab.org. You can follow them on Instagram, the.crew.collab, and follow along on the journey. If you want to volunteer and be a part of it, it is a great initiative, 100% nonprofit. Amazing group of people, and we're going to be flipping the construction industry on its head. Today's episode of the ARC Junkies Podcast is brought to you by ISOTUNES. ISOTUNES are hearing protection that meet the requirements of OSHA and NIOSH to be used in the workplace. They're Bluetooth headphones that double as hearing protection. Now you can listen to your favorite podcast or playlist without drowning out the noise of the grinder with louder music. Get $10 off your purchase today using ARC Junkies 10 at checkout. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. These guys make the coolest stuff you never knew existed. If you're into maintenance welding and it requires you to weld the similar metals together, they've got a rod for you. If your base metal can't be prepped but you still need to make a sound weld, they got a rod for that too. If your current hard-facing wires and rods aren't holding up to the task at hand, guess what? They got a rod for you. Rockmount rods and wires are designed to weld stronger and last longer than typical electrodes. Let's face it, making repairs on equipment out in the field using rods and wires that were designed for initial fabrication in a clean environment just doesn't make sense. These are two different applications. And we all know that time is money, and if your equipment is down for just a few hours, you can be losing thousands of dollars. Stop putting band-aids on your repairs and get the job done right the first time with Rockmount. You can check them out today at rockmountwelding.com and view their full catalog of rods, wires, abrasives, and other consumables to save you time and money and keep your equipment working for you. Don't forget to give them a follow on Instagram and tell them the ARC Junkie sent you. The show is also proudly supported by Everlast Welders. I get questions all the time about what type of welder to buy. I always send them over to everlastwelders.com. Why? Because they make great welding machines at a fraction of the price of others that are on the market. Everlast Welders perform great and they're affordable too. I'm currently using the 255 EXT for all my stick and TIG applications and the Cyclone 200E for all my MIG applications. These machines do everything I need them to do and keep me up and running and cranking out my side jobs. So whether you're doing stick, TIG, or MIG, head over to everlastwelders.com and check out their full line of inverter-based welding machines and plasma cutters. Make sure to use code word ARCJunkies in the comment section at checkout when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, and you'll get that upgraded Nova foot pedal and TIG torch. It's a $100 value. Today I'm talking with Padraic Bean. He's a welder and a CWI who currently works in public transportation sector to ensure that the vehicles we're commuting in the city are safe for the occupants. He's also worked on race cars, roll cages, and done some modern water welding. Really cool dude. We have a great conversation about the welding industry as a whole. Let's go ahead and get into the episode. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the ARC Junkies Podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, so Padraic, tell me a little bit about, where you come from, your history, how you got into welding, what kind of drew you to the ARC?
So, it's really funny, right? Because I think a lot of people, they get into like the high school program, or they have a dad, that's really into doing stuff, or, some sort of an influence like that. And it was a little different for me. I was in high school, and it was like my sophomore, junior, senior year of high school. And I really did not know what direction I wanted to go. I wasn't taking like a high school welding course, and, they didn't offer it in like, we didn't have shop classes that offered, welding or anything like that. But I always watched, like back in the day, I don't know if you remember like Monster Garage.
Oh, yeah.
American Chopper and American Hot Rod, all those shows
inspired so many people to get into welding. I've had a bunch of people on the podcast, spoke to a bunch of people on Instagram. So I think those are probably some of the coolest shows that Discovery Channel could have ever put out.
Dude, I think they were fantastic because for me, I mean, it's not something I did when I was growing up. And really, I honestly, it wasn't something that I was super interested in before I started seeing those shows and seeing the stuff that these people are doing. And I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing. So when they had all those shows, I don't know if you remember, they always used to put out ads for a school called Wyotech. And Wyotech was just this big school for auto mechanics, and they had diesel mechanics and auto body, and they had some welding and fabrication, stuff like that. So I decided I was going to go there. I thought, man, if these are the shows that Wyotech's advertising on, maybe this is what I can get into. So I went there for auto mechanics, and the way it broke up is you did like 6 months of auto mechanics, then you could take a 3-month elective course. And they had a couple electives. They had chassis fabrication, and then they had what they called street rod, which was like sheet metal fabrication. You could do lead work, sheet metal shaping. I mean, really, really cool. So I did the auto mechanics course, and I'm not going to lie, man, right out of high school, I mean, I did okay in the auto mechanics courses, but I kind of bumbled my way through it. Especially when it got into like the really computer heavy diagnostic stuff. But when I got into the chassis fabrication course and we started welding and we started building stuff, I was like, man, this beats auto mechanics any day of the week. So that's really what got me into it was taking that first welding class in Wyotech and being like, no, this is it. This is what I want to do. I think it's cool building stuff. we learned some machining, we learned some TIG welding, some MIG. And then I went into the sheet metal fabrication, and I was like, man, with machining and welding, I could build anything. I can build anything I want. And that was the coolest feeling for me, was, wow, I can build anything I want.
So what did you do after you completed school?
So when I completed school, the first job I found was working at a street rod shop in New Jersey. And, fresh out of school. And, I was like every, 18-year-old kid 19-year-old kid getting right out of school. I absolutely knew everything, just ask me.
Yeah. Walking encyclopedia.
Yep, exactly. 100%. Right. Cause I read it in a book somewhere. So I obviously knew knew everything. Knew what
you were doing. Yeah.
100%. So I found a little street rod shop in town, and they were actually building some really, really cool stuff, man. And I ended up working there for about a year, and we ended up parting ways. And, as I look back on it, I think some of the reasons we parted ways were because I was a young kid that knew everything. Right. But looking back on it, I greatly appreciate the time and the experience that I got there. Every job you have, you put a little bit of that knowledge into your bag of tricks. Right. And, the job didn't pay the greatest or anything like that, but I learned a lot of cool stuff, and I got to take that on to my next job. And then I started working with a racing series called the IROC series. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, if you're familiar. It's called the International Race of Champions. Actually, Chevy has the IROC Camaro. You've probably heard of the IROC. That, yeah. So that came out because of the International Race of Champions. And basically the idea was you took champions from a bunch of different types of auto racing, stock cars, trucks, dirt tracks, stuff like that. And we built a bunch of cars that were supposed to be exactly the same. And we put all these champions in these cars, and they all raced against each other. We ran 4 races a year. And that was a really cool experience. I mean, we got to race Daytona, Talladega, Texas Motor Speedway. We raced all over the country, all the big cup tracks. It was really, really cool.
So were you building the frames and chassis and everything for the cars?
So yeah, it was as far as fabricators, it was only 2 fabricators, me and a guy who ended up turning into a real mentor for me. His name's Dave Rohrig. But yeah, so we were the only 2 fabricators. And, you were doing everything from doing frame and roll cage work to doing sheet metal work to installing seats to exhaust work. I mean, you name it. You got 2 fabricators for a fleet of cars. But the interesting thing about IROC is they were actually they were affiliated with Penske Racing, the NASCAR team. Mm-hmm. And about a year after I started at IROC, they ended up closing their doors. Couldn't find sponsorship, closed their doors. And then just very, very luckily, I ended up getting a job with Penske Racing and moved to North Carolina and started working with them. And we were building frames and roll cages. And actually that guy, Dave Rohrig, that I was saying was kind of my mentor at the IROC shop, he moved in with me. So me and this guy, traveled all over the country working on cars and stuff like that. Then you remember like 2008, 2009, the economy got really, really shaky.
Yeah, it was getting a little worrisome for a while there.
I think it was for a lot of people, right? And I had been dating a gal for a while who's now my wife, but she was from upstate New York, where I live now, and she wanted to move back home. So I met her in North Carolina, and I ended up finding another racing shop just across the lake in Vermont, and that was Subaru Rally Team USA.
Nice.
They were right up here and just across the lake in upstate New York. So I worked there for a while, and again, the whole time, like I said, you're every job you go to, right, you're building that bag of tricks. So I did that for a while, and then I started seeing like advertisements and stuff for commercial diving school. So I went to commercial diving school, took 6 months and became a commercial diver.
Which school did you end up going to?
That was a Divers Academy International, just outside of Camden, New Jersey, southern New Jersey.
Okay. I was actually, so funny story, when I was 18, that's what, like anybody that gets into welding, if they're at a welding school, that's what they want to do, is they don't want to be an underwater welder because they make 6 figures a year and they only work 6 months out of the year. And that's what I want to do. And so I had that same mentality. It was like right before I joined them, I decided that's probably not the best path. And I ended up joining the Marines. But I was looking up at that school up in Jersey. There's one in, I think it's College of Oceaneering out in LA. And then there was one in North Florida. And so
I was going to say, isn't there one down in Florida?
Yeah, but I think the one up in Jersey was better than one in Florida. And then the one out in, all of them were better than the one in Florida, allegedly. But the cost
it's
was
interesting you say that. Because I think they cater to, and somebody out there, if somebody hears this from one of these schools and disagrees with me, I mean, feel free to reach out and set the record straight. But I think in a lot of cases, the schools tend to cater to different parts of the industry.
Right. That makes sense.
It's just like welding, it's a big industry, right? So, some schools may cater more to like the offshore industry. Mm-hmm. Some schools may cater more to like the inland diving industry. So, I've heard like really good things from a lot of these schools. So I don't want to necessarily say that one's better, worse than the other. I think they kind of have different parts of the industry that they relate to.
I got you.
But it's funny you say that, because every time I go and talk to students at like high schools and stuff like that, man, that is like, the first question is usually, how much can I make in welding? How do I become an underwater welder?
Yeah.
It's like the first 2 questions.
I always get it within the first week of school. We talk to students and like, so I want to just like go to a diving school, just like to do it, to get underwater and actually weld. That's one of the things on my bucket list I haven't done, but I think that would also give me a better understanding of what's really taking place, because I get so many questions about underwater welding, and it's like, I'm not an underwater welder, so I really can't tell you, but just kind of logically thinking here, playing with electricity underwater just doesn't seem like, a great gig. But I mean, I'd love to do it.
I think it's like anything else. If you work with a company that has a lot of good safety practices, right, that are really right and tight on their safety, every job has its hazards,
right?
But any place that's really right and tight on their safety, you can mitigate a lot of those hazards. But I'll tell you, like if you went to a commercial diving school, like the program I went to was 6 months, you'd be surprised at how little of it is actually underwater welding.
Yeah, it's like more of a commercial diver, right?
Yeah, exactly. And welding is just part of it.
Yeah.
But the first several months, before they even let you get in the water, is understanding diving physics. What's happening to your body while you're underwater. Mm-hmm. Understanding dive medicine. Because in the chance that something does happen, you may be the first responder. As the diver the other diver that's in the water, or the person's topside. So there's a lot that goes into it, and you really, really have to be willing to. I mean, the course I went through was a 5-day-a-week course, 8 hours a day. So you're going to put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it. It can be incredibly rewarding, but it's not just jumping in the water, right? There is a ton involved in it. Highly recommended, though. It's a young man's game. So if you're getting out of welding school and you're 18, 19, ready to travel the country and stuff like that, it's an awesome option.
Mm-hmm. Now, is the pay as good as they say it is, or is that just like a select small few? So
it absolutely can be. It absolutely can be, but it's like any other industry, right? Whether like you look at welding, for example, because that's the other thing I always hear about is, these 6-figure pipe welding jobs, mm-hmm. right? From kids in high school, and those jobs are out there, but that's not every job.
Yeah. That's not
every job
level.
Is not 6 figures in the welding industry.
Yeah.
If you get into welding, say you went offshore, right? And you're working on like a jackup rig offshore, you're going to spend at least a couple years as a dive tender. So you're not going to get in the water one time. You're going to help other divers who are in the water. You're going to learn how to maintain equipment. You're going to, and you're going to work your way up, and you're going to make your bones on that rig. And then a couple years into it, they may give you the opportunity to break out as a diver. And then you can start making some really, really good money, but you got to be willing to put in that time at $15 an hour.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's just like any other job that was out there. And I like how you're saying you kind of take the skills, you put those in your little bag of tricks, and you move on to the next one, because I mean, that's kind of like, I would say most blue collar trades or most skilled trades, that's kind of, what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to start off at a mom and pop shop. You're going to hit your financial limitations with that place. They're not going to be able to pay you anymore just because they're that big of a company that they really can't afford to up their payroll. But, just like you kind of latch onto a mentor, you learn as much as you can, and then you're off to the next one. They're going to start you off a little bit higher because hopefully you're going to a bigger company, and you're just going to keep transitioning and building up that bag of tricks, or that toolbox, as I like to call it. And so you're bringing more knowledge, more experience to that next job. So you're starting off at a higher salary. Not to say that you need to go get a new job every 6 months to a year, but eventually you're going to settle into a spot where you're nice and comfortable. You kind of understand everything that's going on. You're being, compensated rather well. You get a good benefits package. You got to figure out what priorities you have in life, whether it's financial gain or time with the family or, vacation time or, whatever, you got to kind of figure that it's going to be different for everybody out there. So you got to figure out exactly what benefits you're looking for, and the pay is going to come, but it's not going to come right out of high school. Depending, like a lot of people that I know, they don't want to travel once they get out of school, and they want a job that's within 30 minutes of their house. And it's like, good luck. Yeah. You're not going to find that.
You're cutting your options, right?
Yeah. You're cutting your options,
but if that's what you want, that's okay.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it.
Nope. There's nothing wrong with that. And you talked about, financial compensation, you talked about benefits, and like you said, there's those other important things. When I was 20 something years old and I was working for a cup team, I was single, right? So I could, yeah, you want me to go somewhere? I'll jump in the truck and I'll travel, whatever. But now I've got 3 kids.
Yeah. It's harder to kind of break away and head out.
Well, and what's really important, like at this point in my life, what's really important is being there for bedtime, is reading books and being there for bath time. And that's what's really important to me. So I've been lucky enough to find a company now. I've been with for 8 years. I work with a company that builds transportation equipment for public transportation. And when I started here, I started as a welder on second shift, and that was that was an excellent job for me when I started here. After a couple years, they decided that they would be willing to invest in me a little bit. So they ended up sending me to the Hobart school, and I was able to get my CWI, and because of my welding experience, I was able to get my CWE as well. So they allowed me to transition from a welder into kind of a QA QC role. I got to tell you, like when I was starting out in the welding industry, I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't realize that was a thing. And we were talking about compensation, benefits and stuff like that from a company. Finding a company that treats you well and is willing to invest in you so you can better yourself. That's a huge benefit that I think some people overlook sometimes.
It's a massive benefit. And that's one of the reasons that, I really love the place that I work at right now, because they continue to invest in me. And yeah. I find it kind of odd that most companies, that I go out and talk to, it seems like that's the least amount. They want to invest the least amount of money in their equipment, in their personnel. Like, I don't know what else they're doing with the money, but it doesn't go to the equipment, and it doesn't go to upskilling or educating or continuous training for their personnel.
I think those are the companies where it's easiest to find yourself like feeling taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Because if you're pouring in, you're putting in your time, you're pouring your heart and soul into it. if a company doesn't give you a chance for some training to better yourself, or even give you a pathway, for upward mobility, for lack of a better term, as a worker, can kind of start to put you in the dumps.
Yeah.
So I think finding a company that's willing to do that is super, super important. I don't know how long you've been in the welding industry, 20 years?
Yeah,
something
about
like that?
23, 24.
Okay.
I got to take my boots off to count it.
So, I've been in the welding industry now for 15 years. Some of the companies I've worked with, they were going to teach you great skills, but you probably weren't going to make it much higher than you were, right? But you were going to have the opportunity to learn some great things. But the company I'm with now, like I said, they've taken the step, they've taken that chance to invest in me. And that's one of those things where that's a huge benefit. One of the big things that it does, right, as a welder, as an employee, it makes you feel good about yourself. You feel appreciated. You feel like that they're willing to put a little bit of equity into you, and it makes you willing to put a little bit more sweat equity into them. It makes for loyal employees. That's one of the big things that I push here. One of my main roles right now. So I kind of transitioned out of the QA QC role. And now I'm the welding technical lead for the facility. So I've gone from kind of the QA side to more the technical welding side. So one of our roles and responsibilities is training and qualifying new welders, right? And that's one of the big things that we want to push is that, this idea that we have training for, we can teach you TIG welding on aluminum. We can teach you TIG welding on stainless. We're going to teach you some really cool advanced MIG welding processes. And constantly offering that extra training, extra qualification, keep people interested, offering technical courses to our welders so that they're not just learning the hands-on, they're learning the book side of it too. I think that's one of the best ways to build loyal employees.
Yeah,
I should say.
You can get a hell of a return on investment, just by investing in your employees. Like you said, giving them that opportunity, that chance to shine, that chance to grow and excel in their own career. And I've said it before on the podcast, train your people well enough to leave, pay them well, or treat them well enough to stay. And I think it's 100% true. As cheesy as it sounds, you could, put a picture on it, slap it on a meme and everything. But at the end of the day, folks that are willing to take that time and put that money into their employees, those employees aren't going to go anywhere. And they're going to work twice as hard because they were afforded that opportunity, given that chance to shine. And, that opportunity may come by again. So like you said, you went from, being a welder, you had the opportunity to become a CWI and CWE, and now you're in the technical aspect of it. So you get to do inspection. There's growth for you. And I think that's one of the main reasons I kind of got out of ironworking. After I did that for about 10 years, I was like, well, I made from apprentice to journeyman to, foreman. And it's like, there's really nowhere up from here. This is kind of like I'm at the apex within 10 years of my journey. Like there's nowhere else I can go. I'm just going to come to work every day. I'm going to do the same thing. And it's like, I want a little bit more. And I kind of ran out of opportunities and growth. And I think that's kind of what appealed to me with education is like, okay, I'm going to do something different, but still related to welding. Let me give this a shot. And then the school that I'm working for now, they've made that investment. If had it not been for them, I wouldn't have got my CWI. I wouldn't have got my CWE. I wouldn't have got the welder performance qualifier training. They send me out.
Which is really cool, by the way. I saw
great.
you post something about doing that. And I think that is a really, really cool endorsement.
It's kind of neat. But I was, it kind of caught me off guard. I don't want to seem cocky or anything, but I thought the test was going to be a little bit more difficult than it actually was. But maybe because I've been working out of the code book and doing welder performance qualifier training for a while, and filling out the paperwork correctly, that it was kind of easy.
That's fair.
Well, not easy, but it was. I still had to refer to the books and everything, but I knew where to get the information because I was already working out of it. So, for instance, somebody that's just been doing CWI for a while, they haven't qualified anybody. They just go around and do like threshold inspections or visual. It might be a little bit more difficult for them, but if you can pass the CWI test, you can definitely pass the Welder Performance Qualifier endorsement. But that's one thing. We're looking at becoming an accredited testing facility for a program called OpNext, which is like helping military veterans transition from service, giving them a skilled trade school, and then giving them an actual certification when they come out of the program. So that's kind of one of the reasons, I started going down that path of getting the Welder Performance Qualifier, setting up the ATF, because it's going to be part of the criteria for that thing that that OpNext program that we're going to be running.
I think that's really, really cool too. There's another company that I ran into. I think they're out of like Arizona, maybe. It's called Warrior to Inspector.
Really?
Have you heard?
I haven't heard of this yet. I'm going to write this down.
It's a super, super cool program, man. And I can't remember if it's like a year or 2-year program. And the gentleman that opened it, I don't believe he is a veteran, and I'm not quite sure how he started, but it caters really specifically to military veterans, getting out of the military, getting them ready to take their CWI exams, getting them RT, UT, MT, PT training. Really, really, really cool program.
I'm going to have to check that out. I had no idea that he was even a thing.
Dude, yeah, definitely check him out. I talked to the owner once in the past, and his name's escaping me. Super, super cool guy though. Definitely check it out. If that's something that you're looking at doing, maybe there's a cool collaboration there.
Yeah, that'd be kind of neat. So, like you mentioned earlier that you're training. I guess do you do the preliminary testing for bringing employees on board?
Yeah. So it's really kind of a start to finish process. So from the onboarding side, yes, I sit in for like the initial skills testing. But once if we find an employee or prospective employee, we feel like they're a good fit for us, they feel like we're a good fit for them, then yes, I end up running their performance qualifications.
Okay. So what do you guys, because I get this question a lot, especially with my students, like, what can I expect? And I mean, just coming from a different side of an employer or an employer side aspect, what are some of the things you're looking for in like an entry level employee, somebody coming in? I mean, like from the beginning, what basic tools should they be bringing to a job interview if they know that there's going to be some sort of a weld test?
You use the term tools, so I'm going to speak to that on two different levels.
Okay.
So I think when somebody comes to a job interview, look, we're hiring welders, right?
Yeah.
This isn't a business interview. But I've always appreciated when somebody shows up in even a clean pair of jeans and a button-down shirt. Throw a collar on. A pair of jeans, have your work boots on, that's cool. If you happen to have a pair of work boots that's not your worst pair, toss that on. But if all you have is your worst pair, wear them. Come with your bag, come with your gloves and your hood and your coat. I mean, come ready to throw something down because it's a welding interview. I have had jobs for weld shops where they didn't give me a weld test, but I came prepared just in case they did.
Right.
So come prepared to show your skills. But when you talk about tools, I think the biggest tools that I want to see people show up with is those personal tools, those attitude tools. Mm-hmm. If when you were a foreman, iron worker, right? If an apprentice showed up, you've been in the industry for 10 years, right? You've seen a whole lot. You don't need to hire somebody that knows everything, but it'd be great to hire somebody that's thirsty to know everything.
Yeah.
Someone who's eager and willing to learn. When we do like that initial weld test, sometimes I really don't care what the quality is. And I specifically throw things at people during that initial weld test that they're probably not used to seeing. But I'm going to let them try it a couple times. Right. And what I want to see is, if I give them some instruction, like, hey, maybe we should change your gun angle up a little bit. Maybe you're running too slow, running too fast, whatever. I want to be able to give them some instruction and see how they take that and then use that instruction. Right. Mm-hmm. So I want to see somebody that's, got a good attitude, you work in a big place, people with bad attitudes are a dime a dozen, but you get one person with a good attitude, man, they can turn the morale around in a group like that.
Yep.
That's the person that we want to bring on. I want to bring on the person that's eager to learn. I want to bring on the person that, they get done with their weld test and they clean up all their stuff. Yeah. They're ready to put the workplace back in in as good a condition or better than they left it. It's funny when you talk about entry level welder positions. Like we have a local vocational high school here in town, right? So we get a lot of students from that vocational high school, applying for work. And here's the thing, they all have the same resume. Every single one of them.
Yep.
They got the same resume. They took the same classes. They had the same teacher. Chances are I've probably spoken to their class. I've met them all several times. They all have the same resume. And at that point, what are you hiring on? You're hiring on those skills that maybe they aren't necessarily trained in school. That solid work ethic. I always say, I can take the best welder in the world, but if he's not going to be here for training, I can't use him. If somebody's not going to show up every day, I don't care how good you are, it doesn't do me any good.
Yep.
But if you're a mediocre welder here, but you have work ethic up here, man, I can work with that. I can make that work.
Yeah.
And I would rather have that than somebody with skill level up here and work ethic down here.
Yep. And
any day. So for me, the biggest thing is, you go into an interview, put your best foot forward, show people that attitude, show people the attitude of like the person that you would want to work with, right? If you're going into a job interview, what sort of person do you want to work with? That's, put that forward, put your best foot forward. Let people know you're eager to learn. You're going to show up, 10 minutes early and stay 10 minutes late. Show them that work ethic. Just be energetic. At the end of the day, I don't know about you. I'm a welding nerd, right? I think welding is just cool. Mm-hmm. And when somebody comes in and they're eager to talk about welding, maybe they have a couple questions. They've done a little research on the company, and they've got a couple questions. So you can tell they at least did a little bit of research. Those are the types of people you hit it right off with.
Yep. And I'm glad you mentioned all that because it's almost verbatim the class that I teach when we get into resume writing and preparing them, kind of towards the end of the term, about 3/4 of the way through, sure. We start preparing them for graduation and entering the workforce. And I tell them, get your best clean pair of jeans, yep. Button up shirt, throw a little bit of polish on your boots. I mean, make an attempt to, go in, best foot forward. You don't have to wear a suit. I'm not saying that, but if you got like a nice polo or something like that, wear that. But, have some clothes with you along with all of your welding gear, mm-hmm. because you might interview well, but most of the time you're going to have to do a weld test before you even get to the interview. Because a lot of times if you can't weld, if you can't get past that guy in the shop, you're not going to make it to HR to do the interview and talk about compensation and benefits and all that stuff. So, show up, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Take your welding gear with you because that there's most likely going to be a welding test. So welding hood, jacket, safety glasses, gloves, do all the basics, couple of hand tools, tape measure, that's a big one. Soapstone or a Sharpie, something to write down, so you can do any layout that you need to, and maybe a square. And then, ask them if you can use some scrap material. If they have some scrap laying around, say, hey, this is a different machine than I'm used to. Do you mind if I lay down a couple scrap welds first before, I get it dialed in before I weld on this? And a lot of times they're going to let you do that because it shows you're kind of doing your due diligence. You're not used to that machine. You want to, check it out, make sure you got everything set up before you weld on a part that could cost, several thousands of dollars, depending on the type of industry you're in. And the other thing you mentioned
that's a super good point.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned is doing a little bit of research on the company. I always tell students, make sure that you're a good fit for the company before you even go there. You can get a lot of information just by Google. Check out the reviews on the place. Before I took my second job as a welding instructor, because I kind of got hosed on my first one, I was researching Indeed and Glassdoor and what are the other people that have worked there saying? What are the people that are currently working there? What are they saying? because you can get a lot of insight from people that are currently or formerly working there about how that company treats their people. And like, that's one of the main reasons that I'm working at the place I'm at now, is because all the reviews were positive. Like, everybody loves working there. So I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And like, here I am almost 5 years in with the school. I'm still kind of in my honeymoon phase. Like, it hasn't worn off yet. I still love going to work every day. I like the people that I work with. But had I not done my research and ended up in a different situation, I'd be kicking myself in the shorts. So, I mean, do some research on the company, because the company's going to research you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a really good point, because if nothing else, it just shows interest, right? It just shows that you're interested. And that's really one of the most important things, right? Because those are some of the things you can't teach, and like I said, when you come out of like a high school vocational program, you're trying to get your feet wet in the industry. Every single student you graduated with has the exact same resume. So you got to set yourself apart. And sometimes just that interest. I'm going to give you a story, right? And because it's really one of the best answered interview questions that I've ever asked and had the answer given to me by a young welder. Okay. And I said, it was basically one of those, like, where do you see yourself, in 5 years? Where do you want to be? And he says, I want to be that guy. What do you mean, that guy? He goes, I want to be the guy that, when people talk about him, they say, man, he can fix anything, man, he's a good worker. He's a solid dude. He's like, I want to be the guy that people talk about, and it's positive, and, he can get the job done, and somebody that's respected. He says, that's where I want to be. 5 years from now, I want to be that guy, and I want to find the place where I can be that guy. And I got to tell you, I was sitting there going, I don't care how you weld. You're hired. Right. Like that is a phenomenal answer. That's just a phenomenal answer, because what did he do? He showed us that he had a good attitude, right? Mm-hmm. But he also kind of told us what value we were going to get from him. Yeah. Right. And that's an important thing, right? When you answer those interview questions, because they're all kind of pointed questions. Yeah. But, showed that he had great attitude, and showed that, he was going to show us his value. He was going to be here. He was going to be that reliable guy. He was going to do his best to do the best work that he could. He was going to be reliable. He was going to be honest. Like, it was just one of the best answered interview questions. And, if that guy ever hears this podcast, he doesn't work for us anymore. He's gone on to greener pastures, but just so you know, that's the best answer that anybody's ever given me in an interview. And it got him the job instantly. So he kind of set his own standards and let you guys know what type of employee you were going to be getting if you hired him. That's it. That's it. 100%. He let us know right up front. And was he that guy? I thought he was excellent. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. Like any young person, or I don't even want to say young person, any new person in an industry. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter if you're young, right? If you get into welding at 40, guess what? You're going to have some issues on the job, right? You mess stuff up. Like, these things happen. Yeah. But he always responded well to it. He was honest about it, never tried to hide anything. Like I said, he's since gone on to other work, and that's really, really cool. But yeah, I thought he was fantastic. Absolutely lived up to it. Great. I think that's one of the biggest things is, when honesty is just so huge for me. And I'm big on ethics and principle and stuff like that. So, I tell my students, it's okay to screw things up, but if you screw things up, like you said, don't hide it. Yep. Because we got to fix it somehow. Just use it as a learning experience. I mean, I've done my fair share of screwing things up, small dollar amount up to large dollar amounts. And I've never hit it. The first thing was always a phone call to the boss man. Hey man, I screwed up. And just to get that out of the way, boom, done. Don't hide anything. Let's be honest. You probably sat around for about 10 minutes going, all right, can I fix this? Well, there's been some times. But if it was a complete snafu, it was like, all right, got to call the boss man. That's it. And, and it's kept me out of more trouble just being upfront and honest and saying, okay, I'm just letting here's what happened. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. Or,
what do we do? Or, whatever the case may be. And I've gotten a lot of respect from my supervisors and owners of companies because I had that mentality to not hide it or cover it up or blame it on somebody else.
That's a really, really important thing, man. That's such a good point you're making. Because when you're first, like I said, and it's not just welding. I don't care if you're making cabinets or baking cakes or whatever, you're getting into a trade, you're going to be a banker, it doesn't matter. When you start out in your industry, you're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to. And, it sounds cliche or whatever, but sometimes the loss is the biggest win. Because you're going to learn from that, right? Yeah, you had an issue. But, if you had an issue and you're right up front about it, and somebody says, oh, man, you screwed that up. Yeah, I did. I screwed that up. I'm going to try to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's pretty much the end of the conversation, right? Like, how do you hold that against somebody? Yep. They screwed up, but they came right out. They said they were going to fix it, and they're going to do their best to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I know what to do next time to avoid this situation.
That's it. But you're gonna make those mistakes. Like, don't be afraid of them because it's gonna happen.
It's part of the learning process.
Yeah, it's funny because one of my roles at my current job is when things don't go right and they need to be fixed. It's kind of I work with a team of people and we figure out how do we fix it, right? And one of the reasons I am really, really good at that is because I spent years messing stuff up. Years messing stuff up on somebody else's dime. And learning how to fix it. But honestly, that's actually, I would say right now, that's probably one of my best assets is being good at understanding how to fix stuff and how to get things back on track. I don't think I would have learned that without screwing so much stuff up.
It's the best learning tool. And I've said it 100 times. Like, I learn more from my failures than I do from my successes because it's the failures that kind of burned itself in your mental repository. And you learn so much from it. Yeah, and it's nothing to be ashamed of because everybody has failed. Everybody's screwed up. I mean, look at WD-40, right? That's their 40th recipe. So that means they screwed it up 39 times before they got it right.
My grandpa always used to tell me, anybody who's really good at something used to suck at it.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, it doesn't matter if it's baking cakes, playing guitar, skateboarding, welding, making cabinets. It doesn't matter. You're gonna screw stuff up. But I think that's a really, really good point. And but not just for the welders, right? I think it's really important. And as we move on in our careers, right? Or as welders move up, or as people take management positions, sometimes you forget that. I think, or maybe not forget, but sometimes you overlook, or you need a little reminding what it's like to be that person that's starting out. And as people who are maybe who have maybe been in a company for a couple of years or been in the industry for a couple of years, I think it's really, really important for us to remember that people are just starting out. They're just starting out. And at the end of the day, if you bring somebody on who's 18, 19 years old, right? They're adults, but they're kids. Yeah. They're kids and they're starting the industry. And it's really important to remember that. If your kid was starting a job, and they messed something up or whatever, how would you want your kid to be treated by the higher ups or by the people that have been there? It's really important for the people that have been in the company to remember what those people are going through starting out a trade. And it's incumbent on us to kind of be the ambassadors of our trade to the younger generation of people coming into it. It's important for us to make them see, the things that we love about the trade. And like I said, be good ambassadors for our trade. Because it's real easy in trade shops sometimes, to get kind of caught up in the day to day, and maybe you're a little grumpy or whatever. But it's important when we see people coming in who are interested that we bring them on, It's important that we mentor them, and bring them up. I think that lesson is equally as important. A reminder to people that have been in the industry. Remember where people are coming from. Remember what it was like on your first job. Be willing to give your knowledge to these kids, kids, new people in the industry. Like I said, doesn't matter if you're, 19, 29, 39, you're coming right into it. But we gotta be eager to do that. I don't know about you. Maybe, I don't know what your experience was, but, I worked with some people that were fantastic. They would bring you in, they'd show you little tricks, but there's some people that were very guarded.
Yeah.
Right. About their knowledge. They didn't really want to show it to you. They didn't know if they should, maybe be threatened. Like, is this person trying to take my job? That sort of stuff. But geez Louise, no, we got to give it up. We got to give that knowledge up. And we got to do it freely. We can help people learn by our mistakes so that they don't make the mistakes. We can entice them to come into the industry. That's important. And that's a challenge for all of us. That's like my challenge to everybody who's in the welding industry, find somebody to mentor. And we just need to do it.
No, that's really cool. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I've worked with people, I've worked for people just like that are freely and open with all their knowledge, and they're willing to show you a trick and tips and like how to do things a lot easier. I think a lot of that comes along with your individual mentality, personality, work ethics, and stuff like that. Because if you come in willing to learn and motivated, they're willing to show and teach you. But if you don't have that, they're not going to waste their time on you. But then I've worked with the guys that have, the same thing. Everything is closely guarded because they see you as a threat. Well, if I teach you, we had this old guy, like the first company I worked for when I got out of the Marines, this old guy, Ray. And it was like, he was the only one that was allowed to operate the iron worker. Like the iron worker to shear plates, punch holes. This was like his thing. But I mean, the dude knew his stuff all the way. I mean, there's not a whole lot to know about an iron worker, but that was his thing. You couldn't use the shear. You couldn't use the punch. You couldn't use any accessories on there. If you needed something done, you had to hand it off to Ray. So like me being young and inquisitive, I was like, hey, would you teach me how to run this? Oh, no way. Okay, well, why not? Because if you make less money than me. If I teach you how to operate this thing, they'll kick me out of here tomorrow. I don't necessarily think the company would have done that to him. But I mean, that was like his mentality, and he was upfront and honest with me. I'm not going to teach you because I don't want you to take my job. And that was like, damn, okay. All right, so I'm going to go over and see this other guy and see if he'll teach me how to lay out I-beams, like.
Well, yeah, but, okay, so there's a perfect example. You got a guy, man, that's really awesome at laying out I-beams. You're in your structural steel shop, right? You got a guy that runs the iron worker. If no one's willing to teach you anything, how are you going to be an asset to the company?
Exactly.
Like, I don't understand how people think that works. If they're not going to teach you, how are you going to be an asset to the company?
Yeah, where are you supposed to get this knowledge? That's like, I love the all the things on there. Entry level welder position, 3 to 5 years worth of experience. It's like entry level is not 3 to 5 years worth of experience. And if you want somebody that's entry level, where are they supposed to get that 3 to 5 years worth of work experience if nobody's going to hire them because everybody's looking for 3 to 5? I don't know if that's like a boilerplate for Monster.com and Indeed and all that the other companies, or if that's the HR writing the job description, but. And then, the amount of money that you're attaching to that 3 to 5 years worth of experience, that's not 3 to 5 years worth of, work experience pay.
That's a really, really good point. So, and I'll circle back around to what made me think of this, but like, how I think it's a misconception. There's a misconception, and I know y'all can't see me, but I'm using air quotes, the young people's mentality, the young people's work ethic. And I think that's ridiculous, right? You have all these, some of the best people we've ever brought on are young welders. They're hungry. They want to learn, they want to work. And what they need is guidance. They need guidance. And what they're not finding in a lot of cases from their employers is the training to get there. Because, a lot of these people that say, they talk about that, the new generation's work ethic, they come from a time where a lot of employers offered apprenticeships.
Yep.
These same people, they talk about, how there's been a shift in the culture. Yeah, well, but the same time there was that shift in the culture, there was a shift in corporate culture. They were going to start relying on third parties and tech schools, for-profit tech schools, to train their people, and they weren't going to do it themselves. So I think it's really incumbent, again, on employers to, again, train their people. We need to train our people. We have to take that responsibility on ourselves. That's one of the things that entice people to get into the welding industry, right? What's the fact that you'd be trained. You get into a job, you're going to be trained, you're going to be able to, to make good money. I mean, let's face it. And I don't know. I've seen a couple different studies, and I guess depending on which one you read, you might see a little bit different number. But I've seen anywhere between, in 2025, you're talking about anywhere between 325,000 and 375,000 welding jobs that are going to go unfilled. And I'm sure you've seen numbers like that. But where do employers think they're going to get these people? Like, if you expect the welding schools in the country, like somehow in the next 4 years, they're going to crank out that many welders, it's not happening. Mm-hmm. So we better start putting a significant amount of effort and time into bringing these people up.
Or if these schools are going to be producing these people, you need to start hiring them and kind of picking up where the school system left off.
Absolutely. 100%. But either way, you're going to have to start focusing as an employer. You're going to have to start focusing some attention on training people.
Yeah, I've actually within the past couple of years, I've noticed there's about 3 or 4 companies that I deal with that mm-hmm. they either have an apprenticeship program going on now, or they're putting one together.
That's awesome.
To update and provide annual training for their employees. Teach them all the safety and stuff. Update all their welding standards. Improve all their processes and stuff. But they're actually starting with an apprenticeship program. And I mean, they're starting off at a pretty decent salary. And as you go through the apprenticeship program, the more box you check and the more things you complete, the higher amount of money you're going to make. And at the end of that 4 to 5 years, whatever that company's mandating, you're going to be considered a welder level 1 or welder level 2, or depending on whatever their scale is, but you kind of move up that ladder. So, I mean, you have a pathway laid right out in front of you. So all you have to do is show up and put in your effort, and you'll do fine. They're going to take care of the training. They're going to bump up your pay, your benefits, and all that other stuff as you go through, and you're going to get all that on-the-job training. But everybody right now, they're just okay, the door's open. We're just waiting for that that golden arm to walk through the door, and then we're going to offer them $12 an hour. You can't have that mentality. Like, you guys should have been working on this problem 5-7 years ago, before 90% of your workforce started retiring, so that your workforce could train the new people coming in.
That's it. And, that's such a good point, And what you're talking about right now, this is not like some revolutionary idea.
Yeah.
It's like, it might sound like it, even to people in our generation, it might sound like that's, oh man, they're going to do an apprenticeship. They're going to train people, blah, blah. That might sound like some crazy idea. But if you remember your grandpa and your dad talking about, people in their generation, they started at a company when they were 19 years old, and then they worked there till they were 65 and they retired.
Yeah, that was my grandfather.
But why did he do that? Because he started somewhere here, unloaded boxes or, whatever, sweeping the floor, whatever job he started at. And then, he moved up to this one. And then he moved up to this one, and he got some training, and they taught him some stuff, and he moved up to this one. And they kept investing in him. He stayed. And then he retired from there. Mm-hmm. But that's why they stayed. It's because they were invested in.
Yeah. I just had this conversation with Nick Bizatis for last week's podcast. We were talking about the same thing. Or no, it might have been Chloe Hudson. Either way, I had this conversation a little bit ago. But it's the same thing as a lot of the companies that they would keep people on for 20 to 30 years. they're not doing the same thing anymore, because once that person reaches a certain amount of money, they're more of a liability than an asset, because, well, now we're giving them premium pay. So we got to get that person, we got to get their knowledge, pass it on to the next guy and get them out of the picture so we don't have to pay their retirement benefits. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the ARC Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. They make great products to increase time, productivity, and safety in your shop. Strong Hand Tools are on the leading edge to make your life as a welder and a fabricator easier and more efficient. Check them out today at stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies. We're also brought to you by AHP Welders. If you're wanting to get into welding, or you're a maker or hobbyist, you got to check out these AHP machines. You can get into welding for under $1,000 with these machines from AHP, and they all have the performance you need for odd jobs and practice in the garage. Make sure to use ARC Junkies in the comment section at checkout, and you'll get upgraded to a Nova foot pedal and TIG torch for free with any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. It's a $100 value. Let's go ahead and get back into the show.
So, here's a question for you. I mean, you and I know it's your podcast, and generally you're the guy asking the questions.
Oh, no, go ahead.
But honest question. And like I said, I am lucky enough to work for a company that is willing to invest in its people and create loyal employees. But not every place is like that, right? Mm-hmm. You and I have talked a lot about what young welders, young tradesmen, because we're talking about welders, but this is really, any tradesman can take some of this stuff and listen to it, and it applies. But what do you think employers can do, right? Because what the state of the welding industry is, the same I do as far as the manpower side. So we can try to get welders into it, but what do we do to get employers to keep welders in it once we get them there?
I think that the biggest thing that they could actually do is provide that training. I mean, like we said earlier, investing in your employees is going to attract better welders. It's going to attract more. Like if you're, company A in your small town, and you're the one that's actually taking care of your people, providing training, giving them opportunities for growth, opportunities to make that, that bigger salary that everybody's, kind of after once they get into the welding industry, you're going to start making a name for yourself. People are going to want to come work for you. And now you've got a bunch of really, really good welders competing for a place. You're not just taking anybody off the street just because you need somebody right now. Hold your people to a higher standard of work. And if they're not there, get them some additional training. And I think that's one of the biggest disservices, and I've talked to several people on this, is people just aren't holding a high enough standard of quality. So, if you want this really high level of quality, but you only want to pay $12-14 an hour, you're not going to get that type of performance out of somebody that's working for $14 an hour, because they can go somewhere else and make 18 to 20 or even more. So if your company's not there, start upping your game a little bit. Start implement a quality QA QC program first.
Yep.
And then if your people aren't hitting the mark, you need to start bringing people in to upskill those people. Whether you hire a consultant to come in and do some additional training on a set. Like I got one company who's like, hey man, my guys, their welds are barely passing, the tests and stuff. Can you come in here and just do a whole class on how to do flux core? Yeah, no problem. Done. Yeah. I got another company that wants to do aluminum. Hey, we do a lot of aluminum MIG welding. All of our trailers are aluminum MIG. Problem is these guys weld it and it doesn't hold. Okay, cool. I can be there on, 2 Saturdays from now. We'll do a whole class on it. These people are going to benefit from it. So provide opportunities for growth for your employees. I think that's one of the biggest things we can do to maintain, because otherwise you're just going to get welders that are going to job hop around until they find the good company. Be that good company.
That's no, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's incredibly important. And it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to pay your employees $1 million a year, right? You gotta compensate them. You gotta compensate them fairly for what they bring to the table. But really that investment in your employees, that's a type of equity that people really don't understand or don't give credence to the amount of value that has.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, it's going to cost too much money to train them. Well, how much money are you spending in rework? Because your rework cost is what? They've done studies on that. When I was going through school and everything, rework cost 300%.
Yep.
300% more than the initial investment. Okay. So now we've got a cost of 3 times what it costs to do it right the first time. You know, because now we got to cut it out, then we got to redo the whole thing and then, you know, bring it back up to par.
Yeah, absolutely right. And as soon as I'm sure you've had to write or you've seen an NCR like at some point, right? You've seen a nonconformity report. Mm-hmm. So something like that has to be generated, you know, just the processing time to do one of those, you know, and in different companies, I've seen just the paperwork attached to something like that. You're talking, you know, $2-3 grand just to process the paperwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's the cost of poor quality or COPQ, whatever you want to call it. It's huge. It's huge. And, you know, sometimes, do you ever think so? Sometimes that's a little bit unfairly put square, like on the welder. Because like sometimes, you know, I hear about, you know, you hear about, you know, a welder has screwed something up or whatever, but then you look at the company's quality practices, like you said, you know, they haven't invested to try to get some welding procedures written. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe they haven't pushed to do like a welder performance qualification. You know, so like you said, their quality program doesn't really force the welders to come up and bring their quality levels up.
Yeah. I get feedback from people all the time. They're like, hey, you know, I'm working at this company and like, I'm welding, you know, way better than the guy that's, you know, getting paid a lot more money than me. And I'm having to rework all their stuff. And it's like, okay, well, there's the company's problem right there. You've got somebody in there that, you know, okay, they've been there for a while. Okay. So they got time and grade, time and service, whatever. But if their skills aren't up to par, you know, maybe you should think about, you know, taking that person that's doing all the rework and all their stuff is passing and bringing them up, you know, as far as like pay wise, and maybe taking that other guy that's not putting out the guy or gal, you know, take that person that's not putting out high quality parts and they're failing all the inspections and stuff. Why don't you get that person upskilled a little bit?
Yeah.
Invest in that person. I mean, you're paying them well enough. I mean, provide them some additional training, or maybe, hey, let the new guy that's, you know, cranking everything out and doing shit hot, you know, maybe train that older person that's been there for a while. Maybe there's something going. Send them out for an eye exam. I mean, who knows? Something,
right?
Figure out what that problem is in your QA.
But, you know, I think, you know, it comes back to training again, you know, training for the welder. If you have QA staff that needs to be trained, you know, train your QA staff, send them out to become a weld inspection specialist, or, you know, get them trained up so that they can learn some NDT, get them trained up so that they can become a CWI. You know, hire a consultant to come in, like you said, you know, they hire you to come in to teach some skills because maybe they just don't have the capacity to teach that, you know, and no, it's funny how a lot of it comes back to training and investing in your employees, and how much of that all the way around every department, how that can just make things better in your company.
Right. And the thing is the companies won't invest in it until it's mandated by contract. Yep. So like, you know, we're not gonna take our guys and get them skilled up and make sure they have OSHA 10 because construction is dangerous, or, you know, even, you know, the manufacturing segment, you know, that stuff's dangerous. We're not gonna do that until it's actually required in the prints, or it says that, you know, every person showing up on the job site has to have OSHA 10 as a minimum, you know, safety requirement. You know, the only time they're going to do that is when it's a requirement. You know, it says on the prints, all welds shall conform to AWS D1.1 and be performed by a qualified welder. Oh, shit, we don't have anybody. So, okay, well, let's spend some time and money and get a couple people for this job skilled up. Bring some guys from the other job and get everybody skilled up so you meet these requirements. You know, but if it's not mandated by anybody, they're not going out and being like, hey, you know, maybe we should be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive.
Or, you know, some of the mom and pop shops, they start to see that on contract bids, and they don't bid the contract.
Yeah.
Because it, you know, and, you know, no fault of theirs, but maybe they just don't understand, like, you know, that seems like a crazy thing, you know, oh man, we're going to do this to the D11. What's that mean? You know, bring somebody in to explain it to you, to train your front end management staff, you know, on how you can comply to code requirements. How you can get your welders spooled up, how you can get your detailers to start detailing welding symbolization properly. Bring somebody in to bring your skills up. Again, training. It works for every part of the business, from the bankers to the welders to the plumbers. Training is super, super important. Yeah. There's one other thing that I could say, thinking about it, for a young person coming into like a welding shop. You ever have people like play jokes, like when you come into a welding shop?
Oh yeah. So,
I used to work with this old guy, right? Super, super, super good welder, but he was a joker, man. He was a joker and a half. And one of the things that he would do is, he'd show somebody like how to do something like on the welding bench, right? Young welders, new people coming in. And this guy loved to teach people how to do stuff, but he always had this joke. He'd try to get the new welders to stand above the welding hood with a garbage bag and collect the fumes that came out of it.
Oh, okay.
And he'd say, we gotta take fume samples. And he just got the biggest kick out of it, right? So I would always tell these guys, and some of them are even like, dude, why does he have me getting up on the bench with a garbage bag? I'm like, dude, just humor him. Just humor him. Fall for the joke, make it worth his while. He's a great guy, but have a good sense of humor coming into it too, because welders are jokers.
You got to be careful with that too, because it can get out of hand real quick. We had, especially with that whole night shift, day shift dynamic.
Yeah.
The shift that's best is obviously whichever shift is the one you're working.
Sure.
So if you're night shifted, everything's day shift's fault. If you're day shift, everything's night shift fault. But we had stuff going back and forth, and it escalated pretty. I mean, like gang boxes were getting welded shut. Lunch boxes were getting nailed down. I mean, it was getting pretty, like when you start destroying people's property. But there's a lot of stuff you can do all in good fun. Like I am guilty of sending, and I guess it's considered hazing. But I think it's part of like being part of the team too. But like, go get a can of Arc Start or the beam stretcher or the sky hook or, stuff like that. I've seen the spark samples on Instagram and all that, catching spark samples from the grinder, like you said, fume samples.
Well, and I don't want that comment to get taken the wrong way. I don't, destroying people's property and hazing people, making them feel uncomfortable, stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. Right.
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is, people like to joke around and have a good time and within reason. Nobody should be doing anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or anything like that. I guess I'm just saying, people like to have a good time.
It's okay to have fun at work.
It's okay to have some fun at work. You know what I mean? So like I said, I don't want that comment to get misconstrued.
Oh, no, I wouldn't take it out of context, but just, we've done a lot of, but I think that, it depends on like today's day and age. Everybody, has got, I used to tell people to go fill out a hurt feelings report.
I may have had to fill one or two of those out in my day.
But it just comes with the territory. I mean, it's a little bit, it's different than, like your accounting office or anything like that. I mean, it's blue collars. It's a different dynamic. Definitely a lot of dark humor, and it's a tough job. And sometimes, you resort to humor to make it suck less, because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's not always great to go to work every single day. And, depending on the job that you're doing, I've had a lot of fun welding, but I've been on a lot of shitty jobs, but I've been on a lot of great jobs. So it's a mix. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but I mean, there's a lot of times I've been out there, like grinding for hours on end. I mean, those are the days that suck, but it's gotta happen, so you can weld all through the next day.
Yeah. You'll have that, building that camaraderie with your coworkers, that's going to help get you through. Mm-hmm. Because it's not every day is the best, right? And that's okay. Not every day is the best, and it's like that in any job. But you build that camaraderie with your coworkers, because they're going through the same thing you are. You're going to be there for each other. You're going to have each other's backs. You're going to get through it together. Some of the best friends I have, to this day are people that I worked with, because you spend a ton of time with them.
Yeah. You're spending more time at work than you are at home.
Yeah. You spend so much time with them, and, you build some friendships. You help each other out. You help each other get through it. you can have a lot of fun together, whatever. But I think like you said, you just kind of gotta take it as it comes. You gotta be flexible. You just do what you got to do to get through it. But if you can do that, if that's the sort of thing that you're into, right? Putting in some hard work, but feeling really rewarded at the end of the day when you do it. The welding industry is just awesome for that. You can meet some great people along the way, have some super, super, super cool experiences. As long as you're willing to put in the hard work.
Yeah. And I think that's the best part about this job is it's rewarding because your results are tangible. You can see it. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, whether it's driving down a racetrack, going down the road, you see a building that you put up, or parts that are going into different things for manufacturing. You get to see your work. You're leaving your legacy, and I think that's what keeps us getting back up the next morning, going back into work. Is what am I going to do today? What are these parts going to go into? Like I'm part of a system. It's kind of like being part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's what I get a lot of the joy out of it. That and it's a constant challenge. So my skills are always evolving and I'm getting better each day, that I go into work.
No, that's really cool. Yeah. I got asked. So I've watched a bunch of your videos like on YouTube, right? I've seen those things kicking around, you and Bob Moffett and all those guys. You put out one video in particular, right?
Uh-oh.
And I feel like I've heard this argument in like multiple shops. But you put out the weave versus stringer video. What made you put that out? I mean, have you heard that argument before? Like what's better, what's stronger?
Yeah. So like the reason we put the video out was depending on which comment section you go to, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, there's always the huge stringer versus weave debate. And we thought that'd be a video that would get a lot of views, which at the end of the day, I mean, that's what you want your channel to do. That's how you grow the channels to get more views. So it was like a controversial topic that we're like, hey, this should get a lot of views. But instead of giving an opinion, let's do facts. So we'll weld one up, same settings, same parameters. The only thing we're going to change is the technique. So same contact tip to work distance, same material thickness, gap width, everything, keep it the same. Scientific method, right?
Yep.
Test it and then have it, or weld it and then have it tested by an independent third party. Okay. So we took it up to Select Arc. They actually sent us the coupon sizes and samples and stuff. We tacked it all together. We used their wire and welded everything up. One completely stringers, one complete weave. We maintained, I think, interpass temp of 350 degrees. Just so it wasn't, before we welded on it, we wouldn't weld on it if it was already exceeding 350 degrees. And we monitor everything with temp sticks, which are plus or minus 1 degree. So they're pretty damn accurate.
Yep.
And then took it up there and they did Sharpie V-notch test. They did tensile poles. We did cut and etch. I mean, like a bend test, like everything you could think of. All the tests for qualifying a welding procedure. And the only difference was technique. And it turned out, weaves are in this is once again my opinion, but it's also backed by science, inherently weaker. Not necessarily on steel, but once you start getting into, different types of alloys and stuff, because there's a lot you can do with A36 steel and get away with just because it's such a forgiving material. But you get into certain stainlesses or you get into different types of pipe, P91, depending on the alloys you're getting into, because you're doing a weave and your heat input is a lot greater because your travel speed has drastically decreased.
Yep.
So if you were going to do like a 6-inch weld coupon and, inch thick and you wanted to run weaves on everything, I mean, you're going to be running roughly 3 electrodes per pass, per layer in one shot.
Yep.
Whereas, I might take 4 or 5 and, run stringers and then chip it and wire brush in between. I've got a lot less heat input because my travel speed's a lot faster. Same amperage. Sure. And you can kind of just control it a little bit better.
Did you and I'm trying to remember, isn't that where you saw the biggest difference was on your impact testing?
Yeah, on the Sharpie V-notch test. That was like the biggest, because I want to say, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but the when they did the macros and stuff on it, it wasn't that big of a difference.
Yeah.
As far as like penetration.
I just thought that was a super cool video. You know, it really does show, like, when you get into technical welding, right? And you're doing it at that level, it shows everything that goes into it.
And a lot of people have no idea about the testing that's actually required. You think, you know, some people aren't even familiar with a bend test.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you know, so once I kind of figured out where the missing components were, I was like, especially when I got into teaching, you know, and I did, like, we started talking about weld inspections and stuff like that. So you start getting into weld quality, and they start talking about Sharpie V-notch. And, like, once I started doing more research on this, I was like, man, it's crazy that, you know, as long as I've been welding, I had no information to this, or didn't have access to this type of information. I didn't even know that these tests existed. I thought the only way that they tested welds, you know, back when I was going through, was an X-ray. That was the only thing I had exposure to. I didn't know what a Sharpie V-notch was. I didn't know what a tensile pull was. So we started teaching that in the program, and then when we got to the stringer versus weaves video, we're like, let's give this information to the masses, because people don't know that these are legitimate tests that are designed to qualify procedures. So when you look through a D11 code book and you've got pre-qualified, that means that they've made this weld a bunch of times with the manufacturer's recommendation in this joint configuration, and it's passed all these tests and met all the requirements. We're not just throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks. I mean, this stuff's actually been scientifically proven, and that's why it's pre-qualified.
I think one of the coolest things that I liked about that video was, you know, we've talked about, like, a lot about just being in the welding trade, like being a welder, right? Because, yeah, I mean, as a welder, I mean, the welding industry can take you a million different directions. But then once you start to get into, like, the QA, QC, the technical side, man, there's a whole lot of other avenues. Like, you know, some people want to go to trade school because maybe they don't want to go to college right now, or, you know, maybe school's just not their thing, you know, or I'm sorry, they want to go to, like, they don't want to go to a college, right? So maybe they go to a trade school. But I mean, what if you love college? What if you love engineering? Like, there's still a place in welding for you.
Oh, it's definitely needed right now. Like, I mean, if you're into welding and you've got the gray matter between your ears to do great things, and you're a very intelligent person and interested in reading textbooks and running calculations and stuff like that, the world is hurting. Well, at least the U.S. anyway, is hurting for weld engineers. And there's really only 2, maybe 3 good schools to go to. You know, that's Ferris State, Laterno, and I think they've got a good one up in PA that I'm not 100% familiar with, but I want to say they offer
they got
weld
Ohio
engineering.
State.
Oh, the Ohio State is the one that you got to be careful how you say it. They get mad.
Oh, well, what?
I think there's Ohio State and the Ohio State. You got to put the in front of one of them, but I'm not sure which one does what.
I think it's actually like OSU, like Ohio State University.
Okay.
Now,
Ohio State does have a good one.
Now, but it's funny though, because, like, I've worked with people that went to Ferris State, and I've worked with people that went to Ohio State, and those two programs are very, very, very different. From what I've heard, this feedback I've gotten from them, like, Ferris State is more of like it's a lot more hands-on.
Okay.
Like, so you're going to spend more time, like, in the shop and stuff like that. And Ohio State's a lot more theoretical. You know, so somebody who maybe wanted to go and become a welding engineer, you know, if they had that hands-on time, like in a high school program or even a post-secondary school, you know, and then they went to, say, Ohio State, right? You know, so they're taking a welding engineering program, but they got all that hands-on. That's going to make them like a really, really valuable welding engineer.
Yes.
Ferris State, you know, they do a bunch of hands-on, then you can get your bachelor's in weld engineering technology. That hands-on along with the book learning, man, it can just make you super, super, super valuable.
Yeah.
But I think that's important too, right? Because I think a lot of times when people talk about trades, you know, we forget to mention that, like, you know, whatever your education level, whatever, man, there's
something in welding for you. Yeah.
It's like the most inclusive thing ever.
And the great thing with the weld engineering degrees is AWS will practically pay for your entire thing through scholarships. I mean, you've got a pretty good chance of getting a scholarship if you apply, meet all the criteria and everything, and that's what you want to do. And I mean, they can tell by your writing that, you know, that's a path you want to take. You can get a lot of funding to be a welding engineer.
No kidding. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Look into it. AWS.org, click on the foundation. There's
Okay.
a lot of scholarships in there for people that are pursuing a weld engineering degree because they're in high demand. So, I mean,
That's
if
cool.
you think about, not enough people are getting into trades, there's probably even less people getting into engineering type as far as the trades. It's even a smaller area. And then people that have that hands-on skill with it or that base level understanding of it, it's even less.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And just goes to show you, if you want to get into engineering, go and be a welding engineer. You'll always have a job.
You'll always have a job. You get into weld engineering, especially if you're a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've met a couple weld engineers, and they're like super, super smart people, and they love welding. And like I geek out. Like when they're talking, I just shut up and listen because I don't know a damn thing compared to these guys. They're smart.
No, but that's really, really cool though, right? But what do they need at the end of the day?
Somebody to do the welding.
They need somebody that can pour wire.
Yeah.
So you have to have that symbiosis, be between the two. They're both super important. That's why I say welding is like super inclusive. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. There's a spot for you.
Yeah.
There's a spot for you in the industry. We are taking all comers. Anybody that wants to work, the welding industry will take you and you will have work. I don't know about you. I've been lucky enough since I got out of trade school. I think I've been unemployed for a grand total of 2 weeks.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Not always the best paying jobs, right? But I always had a job.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school I went to high school with a lot of kids, got out and they got business degrees or, all number of, and I'm not just saying like liberal arts degrees, but, all number of, high level degrees from college. And I don't think any one of them can say that they've only been unemployed for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I've worked with, and I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, damn, we were talking about like degrees versus a skilled trade. And I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, but it's like, I hung iron, with a guy that had his bachelor's in accounting. Like literally his bachelor's was in accounting. And I was like, why are you not like off doing accounting work? And he's like, market saturated with it. Can't find any companies that, is a good fit or anybody that's hiring. So I got into ironwork, fell in love with it. Boom, done. Like the guy that helped me last week over at Home Depot, I was in there to get some plumbing parts. He had, he had an associate's degree in business. So what are you doing with that? I mean, not knocking him, but it's like, a lot of people get in, because they were told to go get a degree and they went and got the degree and then they find out that the market's saturated or their heart's not in it or that's not the line of work they wanted to get into and they're doing something completely different. But at the end of the day, they're still paying off that debt.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. And like I said, all the jobs that I had and, I don't know about you, maybe you always had those golden goose welding jobs, I don't know, but I didn't, I didn't always make the most money at welding jobs, but I always had a job. I could always find work. I always found a way to make sure my kids had food on the table. And really a career in welding has done that for me. It's always been reliable. I tell you, I highly recommend it. Anybody who, maybe doesn't know what they want to do or, doesn't quite know what they want to do for college yet, learn a trade. Keep it in your back pocket.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you end up doing something else later on down the road, right? Keep a trade in your back pocket. Because it's funny, you said like, the guy had a bachelor's in business, right? And I'm sorry, the gentleman that you worked with, what was his degree in?
Accounting,
right? But you know what? It's all those people that you run into that like throughout your life, where they have their bachelor's in business or they're accountants. All of them say, man, I really want to learn how to weld. Mm-hmm. They all think that's cool.
Oh, dude, every time I talk to somebody from like the white collar world, like they're like, oh, you're a welder? Oh man, that's so cool. Yeah, like I've always wanted to learn how to weld. Like I've had so many people say that comment. Like I've always wanted to learn how to weld. I think it's just such a cool skill.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Right. I think sometimes like in high school and stuff like that, like, people are kind of pressured to go towards the the college route when maybe it's not the best route for them. But I make this promise to kids. As you get a little bit older, right, and that pressure wears off, if you get into welding or something like that, it's a respected trade. Just like you said, all those white collar guys throughout your career, they're all going to say, man, welding's cool. Yeah. Like, I wish I could learn how to weld. It's a respected trade. Like I said, I think it's a great option out there, and the job market is wide open.
And the possibilities are endless.
Yep. And if, I think right now the average welder's like 56, 57 years old, something like that.
I got to pull that stat up because it keeps reoccurring. It's like right up in there between like somewhere between 55 to 60.
Yes. Right. So, 5 years, 6 years, whatever, those, 60-year-old welders, they're going to be 65 and they're going to be retiring. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the average welder's age. What's going to happen then to the number of welding jobs that are open? Because so many people are retiring, right? Like, get into it. You'll always have a job. Yeah. I guess that's it for me. Get into welding. You'll always have a job, and you'll probably enjoy yourself while you do it.
Cool. I think that's a good place to end it, man. I appreciate you coming out and chatting with us.
Dude, I can't thank you enough. I think it's a great thing what you're doing. Any way I can share my story, share my experiences, whatever. If that somehow gets somebody into it or makes them think that that's what they want to do, man, that's a big win. So thank you for letting me be a part of it. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for you this week. Thanks once again for choosing the ARC Junkies podcast to get you through your workday or your commute. Make sure to check out the ARC Junkies merchandise available on arcjunkies.com. You can follow me on Instagram at ARC Junkies Podcast. You can email the show directly, show@arcjunkies.com. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.